For years, it looked like the Dallas Cowboys held all the power, one of the most valuable franchises in the NFL, a global brand, a fan base that never stops watching, and a front office known for playing the long game when it comes to contracts. And standing in the middle of it all, Dak Prescott, a fourth-round pick, a backup plan quarterback, a player who was never supposed to become the face of America's team. But then something unexpected happened. The Cowboys didn't just need Dak, they depended on him. And that's where the war began. Because what started as a routine contract negotiation slowly turned into one of the most tense standoffs in modern NFL history. Franchise tags, public pressure, injuries, playoff failures, media narratives spinning out of control. And behind it all, a quiet but brutal power struggle over one question. How much is the Cowboys' future really worth if Dak Prescott isn't the one holding it together? And just when it looked like Dallas could control the situation, Dak flipped the entire table. Because in the NFL, you don't truly lose a contract war by saying no. You lose it when the player forces you to say yes. When Dak Prescott entered the NFL, nobody saw this coming. Drafted in the 4th round in 2016, he wasn't supposed to be anything more than a backup. The plan for the Dallas Cowboys was simple: let him develop behind a veteran, maybe become a reliable role player, and move on when needed. But the NFL rarely follows plans. Injuries pushed Dak into the starting role earlier than expected, and suddenly, everything changed. He didn't just survive as a starter, he thrived. Poise in the pocket, leadership beyond his years, wins piling up, and most importantly, he brought stability to a franchise that had been searching for a long-term answer at quarterback for years. Dallas had spent decades chasing the next face of the franchise after the era of legends faded, and unexpectedly, Dak became that answer, not through hype but through results. But success in Dallas comes with pressure most quarterbacks never experience, because being the Cowboys quarterback isn't just about football, it's about being the center of the most scrutinized franchise in sports. Every throw becomes national news, every playoff loss becomes a headline, every contract negotiation becomes a public debate, and once Dak proved he could win, the conversation shifted. He wasn't just a starter anymore, he was an asset the Cowboys could not afford to lose, and that's where the tension started building beneath the surface. Because when a franchise realizes it needs you more than you need them, the negotiation changes completely. The Cowboys didn't rush into a long-term deal with Dak Prescott. Instead, they used one of the most powerful tools in the NFL, the franchise tag. On paper, it protects teams from losing elite players. In reality, it often creates pressure on both sides. And for Dak, it meant uncertainty. One-year deals, no long-term guarantee. Constant evaluation, every season became a test of whether he was worth the franchise investment Dallas eventually had to make. From the Cowboys' perspective, it was strategy. They wanted control, they wanted leverage, they wanted time to evaluate consistency before committing massive money to a quarterback. But here's the problem: Dak kept proving them wrong. Even when surrounded by roster issues, coaching changes, and injuries, he consistently delivered competitive seasons. Not always perfect, not always elite statistically, but always enough to keep Dallas relevant. And relevance in Dallas is everything, because the Cowboys aren't just a football team, they are a global brand. And global brands don't tolerate mediocrity for long. So while Dallas tried to maintain leverage through short-term control, something unexpected happened. Dak's value didn't decrease, it increased. Every year without a long-term deal made him more important, not less. Because the Cowboys couldn't find anyone capable of replacing him, and every failed alternative option only strengthened Dak's position at the negotiating table. The strategy that was supposed to give Dallas control started slipping away from them. At some point, the Cowboys crossed a line they couldn't go back from. Dak Prescott wasn't just their quarterback anymore, he was their entire identity. When he played, the offense had structure. When he was injured or unavailable, everything collapsed. Backup quarterbacks came in, but the rhythm disappeared. The offense stalled. The season changed instantly. That's when the truth became impossible to ignore. Dallas didn't have a quarterback problem, they had a Dak dependency. And in the NFL, dependency is leverage. Because once a team proves it cannot function without a player, The negotiation is no longer about value, it's about survival. Dak understood this, and so did the league. Media narratives began shifting. Analysts stopped questioning whether Dak was good enough and started questioning whether Dallas could afford the chaos of losing him. Every delay in negotiations only increased pressure on the Cowboys' front office. And then came the breaking point. Injuries, playoff disappointments, and organizational instability made it clear that Dallas had no clear alternative. The market didn't offer a better option. The draft didn't guarantee a solution. Free agency was unpredictable. The Cowboys were stuck, and Dak was fully aware of it. Because in contract wars, information is power, and Dak had more of it than anyone else in the room. Eventually, the Cowboys had no choice. They paid Dak Prescott, and not just paid him, but committed fully, securing him as a long-term face of the franchise with one of the most significant contracts in NFL history. From the outside, it looked like a simple signing, but inside the league, it looked like surrender. Because Dallas had spent years trying to control leverage, only to end up in a position where they had to meet Dak's value on his terms. The franchise tag strategy delayed the inevitable, but it didn't change the outcome. Dak got his deal, and more importantly, he got stability. For the Cowboys, it was a necessary move. Without Dak, the franchise risked falling into uncertainty at the most important position in sports. But for critics, it raised uncomfortable questions. Did Dallas lose control of their own negotiation strategy? Or was this always going to be the outcome once Dak proved he could carry the franchise? What makes this story fascinating is that both answers are technically true. Dallas tried to maintain leverage, Dak kept increasing his value, and eventually the system collapsed under its own pressure. Because in the NFL, you can delay a franchise quarterback, but you can't replace one easily. On paper, the Cowboys paid a massive price, one of the largest quarterback contracts in the league. Long-term commitment, huge expectations, immediate pressure to win. But the real victory in this story isn't just about money. It's about leverage. Dak Prescott didn't win the contract war by threatening the Cowboys. He didn't win it through public demands or controversy. He won it by doing something far more powerful. He became irreplaceable. And once that happens in the NFL, the negotiation is already over. The Dallas Cowboys didn't lose because they mismanaged negotiations in a traditional sense. They lost because the quarterback they thought they could control became the one thing every franchise fears most, a proven starter with no viable replacement. That's the hidden truth of NFL contract wars. They are not decided by agents, not decided by headlines, but decided by one question: can the team survive without you? And Dak Prescott forced Dallas to answer that question with a no. The story of Dak Prescott and the Cowboys isn't just about a contract. It's about power shifting in real time inside one of the most valuable franchises in sports. For years, Dallas believed they controlled the timeline. They believed patience gave them leverage. They believed the system would eventually produce a cheaper solution. But Dak Prescott changed that calculation, because in the end, the Cowboys didn't pay him just because he was their best option. They paid him because he became the only option that made sense. And in the NFL, that's not just a contract win, that's a takeover.